The rain in Seattle is less of a weather event and more of a structural reality. It's a liquid gray curtain that doesn't wash the city clean. It just makes the industrial grime slicker, turning the asphalt into black mirrors that reflect the brake lights of gridlock traffic. From inside my shop in the Sodu district, I could hear it drumming a relentless, rhythmic tattoo on the corrugated metal roof, a sound that usually helped me focus, isolating me from the world outside. But today, the noise was just a chaotic backdrop to the high-pitched, screaming whine of my table saw. I was feeding a 12-foot length of quarter-sawn white oak through the blade. My eyes were locked on the rip fence, my hands guiding the wood with practiced, automatic tension. You don't fight the wood, you guide it. If you fight, it kicks back. The air in the converted garage was thick, smelling of cedar shavings, the sharp tang of industrial solvent, and the stale, burnt aroma of coffee that had been sitting in the pot since 6 a.m. It was a good smell, an honest smell. It was the smell of a place where things were built, not bought. My phone buzzed on the workbench, vibrating violently against a tin of beeswax polish. The metallic rattle cut through the mechanical whine of the saw. I ignored it. You don't stop a rip cut halfway through. That leaves burn marks on the grain. And I didn't do sloppy work. I finished the pass, pushing the wood clear of the blade with my push stick, and hit the kill switch with my hip. The blade spun down with a descending, mournful whine, leaving a ringing silence in its wake. I wiped my hands on my heavy canvas apron, brushing off the fine layer of sawdust that coated me like a second skin. I walked over to the bench and checked the screen. 3 voicemails, all from Russo Antiques. I frowned, wiping a smudge of grease from the screen. Elena Russo didn't leave frantic voicemails. She didn't leave voicemails at all. Usually, she was the closest thing Seattle had to antique royalty composed, elegant, and terrifyingly precise. I had done contract work for her for 2 years, structural repairs on Louis XIV chairs that cost more than my truck, complex veneer grafts on tables older than the country itself, and in all that time, I had never heard her voice rise above a polite, professional alto. She treated emotion like a smudge on a mirror, something to be wiped away immediately before anyone else saw it. I pressed play on the first message, holding the phone to my ear as I walked over to the window, watching the rain sheet down. Mr. King, it's Elena Russo. Please call me the moment you get this. Short, tight. The syllables were clipped, as if she were biting them off to keep from saying more. I played the second. Silas, I know it's early. I don't care about the hourly rate or the rush fee. Just pick up the phone. Silas. She never used my first name. It was always Mr. King or the carpenter. Hearing my name in her voice felt wrong, like seeing a crack in a diamond. I played the third. The background noise was different, quiet, insulated, breathless. Please, it's the Legacy Armoire. I didn't call back. I didn't waste time negotiating. I grabbed my keys and my go bag, a battered leather satchel filled with my diagnostic tools. Digital calipers, a pinless moisture meter, a high-intensity inspection flashlight, dental mirrors, and a set of Japanese chisels rolled in oiled leather. I threw the bag into the passenger seat of my beat-up Ford truck, fired up the engine, and drove north into the rain. Russo Antiques occupied a prime corner lot in Pioneer Square, a red brick building that radiated old money and historical significance. The rain slicked the cobblestones outside, making the warm, golden glow of the showroom windows look like a portal to a different world, a world of velvet and mahogany, a world I visited to fix things, but never stayed in. I parked in the loading zone, ignoring the permit-only sign. I walked through the heavy oak front door, the brass bell above it chiming softly, a polite, expensive sound that seemed to judge my arrival. My work boots, heavy and scarred with dried glue and dark walnut stain, made a dull thud-thud sound against the polished Italian marble floor, a stark contrast to the delicate click of heels that usually graced this space. The showroom was empty of customers. It smelled of lemon oil, beeswax, and silence. It was a library of dead things preserved in perfection. Louis XIV chairs, mahogany sideboards, Georgian highboys, all standing at attention, waiting for someone wealthy enough to take them home. Mr. King? I turned. Usually, Elena Russo looked like part of the inventory, impeccable, timeless, untouchable. She wore a tailored charcoal suit that fit her like armor, her dark hair pulled back into a knot so severe it must have given her a headache. but the armor wasn't working. Her eyes were shadowed, rimmed with the red of sleeplessness. She was holding a manila folder against her chest so tightly her knuckles were white, as if the papers inside were the only thing holding her upright. "Miss Russo," I said, stopping 3 feet away. I kept my hands at my sides. My hands were rough, the calluses thick from sanding and lifting, my fingernails permanently darkened by walnut extract. I didn't want to accidentally snag her silk blouse or leave a mark on the perfection of her space. "You said it was an emergency." "It is," she said. She didn't offer a polite greeting. She walked past me to the front door, her movements jerky and tense, and flipped the deadbolt. Then she reached up and turned the sign to "Closed" at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. That was the first real warning bell. Elena never closed. She once kept the shop open during a city-wide power outage, lighting beeswax candles and turning it into a period-correct experience just to keep the revenue flowing. She turned back to me, leaning against the door as if her legs were giving out. "If I don't secure the certification for the Heritage Auction this Friday," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper that barely carried over the sound of the rain against the glass, "the bank calls my commercial loan on Monday morning. Russo Antiques ceases to exist." I stood still, processing the math. I knew the antique market was tough, but I didn't know she was on the edge. "Certification for what?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "The centerpiece," she said, "the lot that anchors the entire catalog. The appraisers are coming in 48 hours. "Okay," I said, shifting into problem-solving mode. "And let me guess. The appraiser is Julian Vance?" She flinched, her eyes snapping to mine. "How did you know?" "Because Vance is a shark in a 3-piece suit," I said flatly. "And he's been trying to buy you out for pennies on the dollar for years. I've heard the way he talks about this place. If he's the one certifying, he's not coming to look at the furniture. He's coming to look for a reason to shut you down. He's going to look for dust motes with a microscope." "It's worse than that," Elena said, pushing off the door and pacing the marble floor. The click of her heels was sharp and nervous. "He claims he has a tip that the piece is structurally compromised. He's not coming to appraise it, Silas. He's coming to condemn it. If he finds one flaw, just one, he won't just reject the piece. He'll blacklist my catalog. He'll brand me as a fraud to the entire Pacific Northwest collector community." She stopped pacing and looked at me, her defenses crumbling. "And if he does that, I've already signed a letter of intent for the building across the street. My expansion plan relies entirely on the down payment from this auction. If I fail, I lose the shop, the expansion, everything. My father's legacy evaporates." "And is it?" I asked. "Compromised?" Elena looked at the stairs, biting her lip. "I need you to come upstairs, to my private residence." I paused. My tool belt shifted on my hips, the leather creaking in the quiet room. I had never been past the velvet rope. The apartment upstairs was her sanctuary, a place no contractor, no client, no one from the business side of her life was ever invited. It was the only part of her life that wasn't for sale. "Upstairs?" I clarified. "Please," she said. It wasn't a command. It was a plea from a woman who had run out of options. Any outside conservator would require chain of custody paperwork and a week-long waitlist. Vance knew that, which is why he set the 4 8-hour trap. "You're the only one I trust to handle the wood without breaking it further. You're the only one who knows the difference between a scratch and a fracture." I nodded once. "Lead the way." We climbed the spiral stairs. The air changed as we ascended, leaving behind the sterile, climate-controlled cool of the showroom for something warmer, softer. The scent of commercial lemon oil faded, replaced by something personal: lavender, old paper, and faint coffee. Her apartment was stunning. It wasn't a showroom. It was a home. A loft-style space with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the gray, rainy city. It was filled with books stacked on the floor, soft rugs that looked comfortable rather than expensive, and art that looked like she bought it because she loved it. Not because it would appraise well, but she didn't stop in the living room. She walked straight down the hall and opened the double doors to a private library suite at the back of the apartment. It was a large, quiet room, lined with bookshelves, but standing against the far wall, dominating the space like a monolith, was the most magnificent piece of furniture I had ever seen. It was a French armoire, easily 8 feet tall, black walnut, aged to a deep, rich chocolate color that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. The front panels were inlaid with intricate marquetry of lighter fruitwoods, cherry, pear, and satinwood. depicting vines, birds, and mythical scenes. The craftsmanship was breathtaking. Late 18th century, Lyonnais school. It radiated history and power. This, Elena whispered, standing before it like a guard dog, is the Russo legacy. My great-grandfather brought it over from France in 1920. It survived the Depression, 2 fires, and my ex-husband. It's beautiful, I said honestly. My carpenter's brain was already dissecting it, checking the dovetails, the mortise and tenon joinery, the grain direction. But why is it up here? Because it's the only place in the building with stable humidity, she said. And because it's broken. I frowned, stepping closer. I pulled out my high-intensity flashlight. I scanned the exterior veneer. It looks perfect to the naked eye. No warping. No lifting. The finish is intact. Open the right door, she said softly. I reached out. The brass hardware was cold under my fingers. The key was intricate. A heavy iron thing. I turned it. It clicked smoothly. I pulled. The door swung open, and the sound hit me like a physical blow. Groan. It wasn't a squeaky hinge. It was the deep, resonant complaint of wood under torture. The entire frame of the massive cabinet shuddered. The back panel didn't just rattle. It swayed. I froze. I carefully stabilized the door with my hand, taking the weight off the hinge. I leaned in, shining my light into the dark interior. There it was, a hairline crack, almost invisible from the front, running down the central load-bearing spine of the piece. It started at the crown molding, snaked behind the shelving rails, and vanished behind the drawer slides. It wasn't just broken. It was dying. Gravity was pulling it apart from the inside out. The sheer weight of the massive solid walnut doors was shearing the spine in half. If anyone moves this, I said, my voice low and serious, it collapses. The torque is too high. It's a pile of expensive firewood waiting to happen. I know, she whispered. She sat down on the edge of the leather sofa in the center of the room, her posture finally collapsing. She looked small against the dark leather. I discovered it last night. The vibration from the condo construction next door. The pile driving. It must have triggered an old stress fracture. She looked up at me, and I saw the terror she hid from the world. He'll tell everyone I tried to pass off a broken frame as mint condition. The auction house will drop me. The bank takes the building. I looked at the crack. I looked at the intricate joinery that held the whole thing together. This wasn't a simple glue-up. This was major surgery on a geriatric patient. To fix this, I said, running my hand gently along the fractured wood, feeling the heat of the friction. I can't just inject glue. It won't hold. The leverage is too great. I need to stabilize the spine. I need to graft a Dutchman, a patch of new wood, into the rear column to bridge the fracture. Then, I need to reinforce the internal bracing without disturbing the exterior veneer. I calculated the hours in my head. I can't take it to my shop, I said. The vibration of the truck would finish it off. The moment we tilt it to get it on a dolly, the spine snaps. Then fix it here, she said. She stood up, stepping into my space. The desperate energy coming off her was palpable. Name your price, Silas. Double your rate. Triple it. I don't care. Just save it. I looked at the wardrobe. It was a challenge, a puzzle. But more than that, I looked at her. I saw a woman who had built a fortress around herself, a woman who valued perfection and strength, now standing in the ruins of her own safety. I knew that feeling. I knew what it was like to build a life you thought was solid, only to have the foundation rot out from under you. My ex-wife had taught me that lesson with a signature on divorce papers and a cleared-out bank account. I understood the difference between a surface scratch and structural failure. I don't need triple, I said, unbuckling my heavy tool belt and setting it on the floor. I need a written work order authorizing the repair so Vance can't say I touched it illegally. I need a key card for 2-4-hour access. And I need a closed room policy for this piece security, not secrecy. If you want a second set of eyes, choose them. Your attorney, your insurer, anyone you trust. I just need the chain of custody locked so no one can claim I tampered with it. She exhaled, a long, shaky breath that seemed to deflate her entire body. I trust you. Just fix it. The first step wasn't the glue. It was the wood. I need walnut, I said. inspecting the fracture closer with a magnifying loupe. But not just any walnut. This is French black walnut, air-dried for probably 50 years before it was even cut in 1790. If I use keyline dried American lumber from Home Depot, the moisture content will be wrong. It will shrink differently than the old wood. And in 6 months, it will crack again. Elena looked at me, her eyes wide. So what do we do? Fly to France? No, I said. We go hunting. 30 minutes later, we were in my truck. Elena had swapped her heels for boots, but she still wore the charcoal suit trousers and a trench coat that probably cost more than my suspension system. I drove us to the industrial outskirts of Seattle, past the shiny tech campuses, to a place called Old Growth Salvage. It was a boneyard for buildings, stacks of reclaimed timber, old doors, and beams from demolished factories. It was a place where history came to decompose. It was pouring rain. The mud in the yard was 6 inches deep, a churning mess of brown sludge. Stay in the truck, I said, killing the engine. It's a mess out there. It's my armoire, she said, opening her door. I'm coming. We walked through the maze of wet timber. I watched her out of the corner of my eye. Most clients would be complaining about the mud or checking their watches. Elena was scanning the wood stacks with the same intensity she used in her showroom. She touched the rough beams, respecting the material. We found Gary, the yard owner, sheltering under a corrugated tin roof with a lit cigar. He looked at Elena's suit, then at me. Silas, Gary grunted. You bringing bankers to my yard now? She's the client, Gary, I said. We need walnut. Old. Tight grain. 19th century or earlier, Gary spat. Good luck. Picked clean last week by the condo developers. They want rustic accent walls for the lobby. Elena stepped forward. I don't need accent walls, she said, her voice cutting through the rain. I need structural density. I need a beam that held up a roof, not a facade. Check your inventory for the demolition of the First National Bank building from '98. Gary raised an eyebrow. He looked at me. I shrugged. Row 4, Gary muttered, pointing with his cigar. Back corner, under the blue tarp. We walked back. I pulled the heavy canvas tarp off a stack of dark wood. I found a beam that had come out of a 19th century bank building. It was covered in grime, nails, and pigeon droppings. But underneath, the wood was true. I scratched the surface with my thumbnail. Dark, chocolate brown. I pulled out my moisture meter. 8%. Perfect. This is it, I said. I can mill a Dutchman patch from the core of this beam. It's stable. It's seen 100 years of Seattle rain and stayed straight. I hauled the heavy beam onto my shoulder. It was wet and dirty. Let me help, Elena said, reaching for the other end. It's heavy, Elena. 80 pounds. I lift antique sideboards for a living, Silas. I'm not fragile. She grabbed the end. She braced her feet in the mud. We carried the beam together to the truck, moving in sync. She didn't complain when the wet moss stained her trench coat. She didn't flinch at the weight. We heaved it into the bed of the truck, the suspension groaning. We stood there for a moment in the rain, breathing hard. Her hair was plastered to her cheeks, the severe bun unraveling. She looked wild, alive. You're strong, I said. It was the first personal compliment I'd ever given her. She wiped a streak of mud from her cheek, smearing it further. She looked at her dirty hands and laughed a short, surprised sound. You have to be, she said, her eyes darkening. In this business, if you look weak, they eat you alive. Julian Vance. He calls me the Dowager behind my back. He thinks I'm just a widow playing shopkeeper with her inheritance. He thinks I don't know the difference between veneer and solid wood. He's an idiot, I said. You have a good eye, and you know your joinery. I saw you checking the dovetails on that chest last week. She looked at me, surprised. You noticed? I notice everything. I said. I notice that you keep the showroom at 45% humidity exactly. I notice you never put polish on a wax finish. You respect the work. The rain drummed on the roof of the truck. For a moment, the gap between us, the carpenter and the client, the blue collar and the silk suit felt very small. We were just two people standing in the mud, trying to save something beautiful. Let's get this wood dry, I said. We have a cabinet to save. Back at the apartment, the real work began. Restoration is a conversation with the past. You can't shout. You have to whisper. I set up a makeshift workshop in her private suite. Drop cloths covered the Persian rug. My specialized tools were laid out like surgical instruments. Japanese pull saws, chisels honed to a mirror edge on water stones, brass clamps, and the electric pot for the hide glue. We had to use hide glue. It smells pungent like wet animal, but it's the only historically accurate adhesive. It creates a bond that moves with the wood, unlike modern synthetic glues that turn hard and brittle. I stripped off my wet jacket and flannel, working in a gray t-shirt. The room was warm. I had cranked the heat to help the wood acclimate. I spent 4 hours carefully removing the back panel of the armoire. It was held in place by hand-forged iron nails. I had to extract each one without bruising the wood, using a pair of pliers and a scrap leather pad for leverage. Elena stayed. She sat on the floor near the sofa, surrounded by paperwork, auditing her own loan documents. She was on the phone for an hour, her voice low and tense, arguing with a bank officer about liquidity ratios and confirming the wire transfer instructions for the building purchase contingent on Friday's funds. But every time I looked up, she was watching me. "You're incredibly patient," she observed around midnight. I was using a dental pick to clean old, crystallized glue out of the fracture. Most men would have used a crowbar by now. "Impatience breaks things," I said. "My father taught me that. He was a framer. Built houses fast, cheap. They sagged after 5 years. I hated it. I wanted to build things that lasted." "And your wife?" she asked. The question hung in the air. Surprisingly intimate. Did she like things that lasted? I paused. My hand tightened on the tool. She liked things that looked good on Instagram. She didn't care if the foundation was rot, as long as the paint was fresh. When the business had a bad year, she checked out. Said I was too slow to make real money. "I'm sorry," Elena said softly. "Don't be." It taught me to look at the structure, not the surface. I looked at her. "Like you. You're worried about the loan, about Vance, about the reputation. But the core of this business, it's solid. You have good pieces. You treat people fair. That's the structure. Vance is just termites." Elena smiled. It was a tired, genuine smile that softened the sharp angles of her face. "Termites. I like that." "Coffee?" I asked. "God, yes." She went to the kitchenette. When she came back, she had shed the muddy suit. She was wearing a simple cotton robe and slippers. She looked softer, more vulnerable, stripped of her armor. She handed me the mug. Our fingers brushed. I pulled back slightly, mindful of the boundaries. I went back to work. I sawed the patch from the reclaimed beam. I shaped it with a chisel, testing the fit against the fracture. It had to be seamless. A Dutchman repair is like a puzzle piece. If it's too loose, it fails. If it's too tight, it splits the wood. At 3 a.m., the patch was ready. "This is the moment," I said. "I'm going to apply the hot glue. Then I have to clamp it. We have about 60 seconds before the glue gels. Once it sets, it's set." Elena stood up. "Can I help?" "Hold the light," I said. "Aim it right here. Don't shake." She stepped close. I could smell the clean scent of soap. She held the flashlight steady. I dipped the brush into the pot. The glue was amber and hot. I brushed it onto the joint. Steam rose. I slid the walnut patch into the fracture. It fit with a satisfying, hydraulic thunk. "Clamp," I ordered. I grabbed the heavy brass clamps, tightening them down. The excess glue squeezed out. "Got it," I breathed. I wiped the excess glue away with a warm rag. The joint was tight, invisible. "Now what?" she asked, her voice hushed. "Now we wait," I said. "It needs 24 hours to cure fully. But in 12 hours, it will be strong enough to hold its own weight." I stood up, stretching my back. My spine cracked audibly. "You should sleep," I told her. "The inspection isn't until tomorrow afternoon." "I can't sleep," she said. She looked at the wardrobe. "If this fails, my father's name." "It won't fail. How can you be sure?" I looked at her. "Because I fixed it, and I don't leave things broken." She looked at me, searching my face for any sign of doubt. Then she reached out and touched my arm. Her hand was steady. "Thank you, Silas. Go get some rest, Elena. I've got the watch." She hesitated, then nodded. She went to the adjoining guest room to try and sleep. I sat in the chair by the window, watching the rain, listening to the clamps settle and the wood groan as it adjusted to the repair. It was a peaceful night. I wasn't just a contractor anymore. I was holding the line. The crisis didn't wait for the glue to dry. At 4 p.m. the next day, the rain had stopped. leaving a heavy, humid mist over the city. I was in the suite, gently removing the clamps. The glue was hard, but not fully cured. It was in the green stage, stable, but fragile. My phone buzzed. It was Marco, my apprentice at the shop. Boss, you got a problem. Julian Vance just walked into the shop downstairs. He's asking the assistant where you are. He knows you're working on something big. He's early. My blood ran cold. Vance was early. He knew. Elena's landline rang at the same second. She picked it up. Russo residence. I watched her back stiffen. No. The appointment is tomorrow, Julian. She listened. Her shoulders slumped. Fine. Give me 10 minutes. She hung up, her face pale. He's downstairs. He says he has a tip about damage. He wants a preliminary view now. Or he pulls the lot from the auction. The glue is only 12 hours in, I said, standing up fast. It's holding, but it's not structural yet. If he opens that door and pulls on it, the leverage will snap the joint. It's still wet inside. We can't stop him, she panicked. He has the board's authority? We manage him, I said. Go down there. Stall him. 3 minutes. Make him tea. Spill it. I don't care. She ran. I grabbed a block of scrap walnut and my drill. I crawled inside the wardrobe. I couldn't speed up the chemistry of the glue, but I could cheat the physics. I wedged the block of wood into the blind corner of the cabinet, between the drawer runner and the side panel. I drilled it in place with 2 screws, carefully aiming for a non-original sacrificial cleat I'd installed earlier for exactly this kind of bracing. I didn't touch the antique wood. It acted as a temporary internal crutch, transferring the weight of the door directly to the solid carcass of the cabinet, bypassing the healing spine. It was a trick. A structural sleight of hand. If he opened the door gently, it would feel solid. If he yanked it, the block would slip and the whole thing would implode. I scrambled out, hid my tools under the sofa, and threw a throw blanket over the sawdust pile. I heard voices in the hall. It really is inconvenient, Elena, a man's voice drawled. But transparency is key. Julian Vance walked in. He was wearing white inspection gloves. He looked like a man who enjoyed finding problems. I stood by the window, arms crossed, trying to look imposing. Vance paused when he saw me. He looked at my t-shirt, then at Elena. I didn't realize you had company, Vance sniffed. And the help? No less. Silas is. Consulting on security, Elena lied smoothly. She stood tall, masking her terror. Vance sneered at me, then turned to the armoire. Let's see if the rumors are true. He reached for the door. My heart hammered against my ribs. Please hold. Please hold. He turned the key. He pulled. The door swung open. Smooth. Silent. Solid. The hidden block took the load. Vance frowned. He stopped the door halfway. He expected a rattle. He grabbed the edge of the door and jiggled it. He was trying to break it. Careful, I growled, stepping forward. That's 300 years of history you're manhandling. Vance glared at me, then ran his gloved hand down the spine. He was inches from the repair, covered only by a thin layer of wax I'd applied to hide the glue line. Solid, he muttered, sounding disappointed. It's pristine. He checked the hinges. He checked the back panel. He found nothing. He stripped off his gloves. Fine. I'll sign the preliminary certification, but I'll be watching the auction results closely. If there's a wobble on stage, I'm pulling the listing. He left. We heard the front door chime. Elena collapsed. Her legs just gave out. I caught her. I didn't mean to hold her, but my instincts moved faster than my brain. I caught her by the elbows, steadying her. You did it, she breathed, looking up at me. You saved it. We did it, I said, keeping my hands on her arms, steadying her. She looked up at me. Her eyes were wide, unguarded. You saved me, she whispered. I fixed a cabinet, Elena. No, she said. She reached up. She started to brush a speck of sawdust from my cheek, then stopped herself, letting her hand drop. I took a step back, forcing my hands to stay visible, steady, professional. The glue was still wet. She was vulnerable, and I wasn't going to be the man who took advantage of a crisis. The glue needs 12 more hours, I said gently. I'm staying until it's cured, and I need to remove that wedge before the auction. She looked at the space between us. Then she nodded. She understood. I was protecting her, even from myself. Stay for dinner? She asked. I make terrible pasta. I love terrible pasta, I said. 2 days later, the heritage auction. The armoire sold for $250,000, a record price. I was at the loading dock, packing my tools into my truck. The piece was gone, loaded onto a white glove delivery van. It was solid, the repair permanent, the trick block removed, and the screw holes filled with invisible wax. Elena found me. She was glowing, holding a bottle of champagne. You're leaving? Job's done, I said. Check cleared. She handed me an envelope. My fee. It was thick. That's for the work, she said. Then she pulled a second envelope from her clutch. What's this? An offer, she said. The letter of intent for the building across the street? I countersigned it this morning. The auction proceeds are the down payment. We close on Monday. I opened the envelope. It was a partnership agreement. I'm opening a restoration wing, she said. I don't want to just sell history, Silas. I want to save it. I need a head of restoration. Someone who knows that the structure matters more than the veneer. Someone who stays when things are broken. I looked at her. She wasn't the terrified woman in the suite anymore. She was a queen building her kingdom. I come with sawdust, I warned her. And I listen to bad radio while I work. I'll buy noise-canceling headphones, she smiled. I looked at the empty loading dock, then at the woman standing in front of me. Yes, I said. She didn't shake my hand. She reached up, took my face in her hands, and kissed me. It was soft, brief, and solid. It felt steady. See you tomorrow, partner, she said. See you tomorrow. I walked to my truck. The rain had finally stopped, and the air smelled like clean wood and new beginnings. The end. Closing thoughts. The core lesson. Reliability is love you can measure, shown in actions, not promises. The green flag. They notice the small things and show up when it matters. Engagement. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.